Hey everybody, Matt from the Rational Rant, and today's video is going to be 5 reasons why third world countries exist. Now, I'm going to say this right off the bat. One note is that this is a very broad topic. I'm not necessarily going to hone down on each individual part of this video in super big detail. I will do that in future videos, but I just wanted to lay out some general reasons why third world and developing nations still exist in the world today. Many people would expect that because we live in a more technologically advanced age, in a more connected age with the internet and with globalism and just the way the world is becoming more interconnected, that a lot of these countries would not exist in the state that they currently are in. So hopefully I can provide a little bit more detail on why these countries exist and maybe what we can do to help change their existence in the first place. Reason number 1 is international intervention. If you guys aren't familiar, throughout the 70s and the 80s, even a little bit before, America participated in what is known as the Banana Wars. To sum up the Banana Wars, we basically went into South America, who had just had all these new democratically elected leaders, and a lot of American business interests sat them down and we were like, hey, we want to get your land, we want your industries, we want you to sell to America at very cheap prices or else we're going to rough you guys up. And since a lot of these countries were democratically elected and they were new governments, there was a lot of pushback from these newly formed governments. Panama is one, Ecuador is another, and several other countries in Central and South America. So lo and behold, because a lot of these countries pushed back on American interests, we have assassinated leaders that ended up coming out of the woodworks within a few years of them being elected. And with that, we also have situations like the ousting of Mossadegh and Saddam Hussein and Gaddafi in Libya. All these different incidents are serving factors for the power vacuums that were left and why even more radical ideologies were able to take over some of these countries. And if we were to stop foreign intervention, mostly militarily, but also somewhat financially, a lot of these interests would not have the same reason to go about doing what they're doing in the first place. We would be able to hopefully bring them into more of a modern governmental system, such as democratic socialism or even a constitutional republic like we have in America. And we could try and somewhat elevate them out of their situation. But due to all of the intervention that has occurred in the past, we have honestly changed some countries so much that they're unrecognizable from before we intervened. And it is almost up to us to try and do something about it, to try and help these nations and try and uplift them. Because if we didn't intervene in the first place, they wouldn't be in the situations that they are today. Now, this mostly is in reference to a lot of the countries in Central and South America, but there are a few countries in the Middle East and Asia and Africa where this was also a big factor. Obviously, China's one, I think Taiwan, and no, not Taiwan, Vietnam, and like Bangladesh and India, and a few African countries that I can't name off the top of my head. But these nations are all influenced by foreign interests, by the powerful, and if they were able to pursue their own governmental and societal systems, they might end up in a different place than they are now. Reason number 2 is economic and political strife. Now, I know that's pretty broad, but I mean in the context of authoritarian leaders like the ones in Africa, all the African warlords, and also there's even warlords in the Middle East and in some parts of India. And a lot of these leaders are ruthless. Obviously, you had, I think it was Coney 2012 or whatever it was, the African warlord who had children as an army that he used to fight other warlords in Africa. So Political strife, as in authoritarian rule, where a lot of people who live in certain countries, such as Uganda and the Congo, once again, Vietnam, Bangladesh, all these different countries are influenced by, North Korea is another one, by very authoritarian leaders. And history has proven that is not a good thing. That is not the evolution that we need to take in terms of human governance. We need to be less centralized by one person, and we need more democracy. Democracy is the future, and if you do not advocate for it, I don't agree with you. Democracy is the best system that we know of, and the more democracy we can have, the better that society is going to be. And in terms of economic strife, it coincides with the political strife because a lot of the leaders in these countries get billions of dollars in foreign aid. And a lot of this foreign aid just goes straight to the pockets of the government, the army, the political leaders, and none of it goes to actually help the people. This money is supposed to be for food, for necessities, water, clean water, and whatnot. And a lot of the people in these third world countries don't get these things because of their government, because they're so authoritarian, and because they take away all of the money that should be going to these people in order to put it in their own pockets. The third reason is going to be national conflicts and basically civil wars. Now, this does tie back in with the other two, with authoritarian leaders and whatnot in these countries, but because they exist, there is so much strife in these nations that civil wars pop up like wildfire. I mean, the Arab Spring, and then we had obviously like 3 or 4 different civil wars happening in Africa at different time points, several happening in the Middle East, and throughout the last 40 or 50 years, we have seen many, many more in different regions around the world. And a lot of these pop up because there are such political hotbeds of activity that people have nothing else to do but to fight for their causes, whether that's a good or a bad cause. A lot of these nations are in such a place of strife that that's all that people can really do to try and change something, because the entire global system as a whole has basically ignored them. Once again, we give foreign aid to other countries that's supposed to help them, but we're basically just giving money to African warlords who pocket it, fund their armies to control their populations, and the people stay impoverished and they're still labeled third world countries. So because of civil war, it obviously doesn't help the situation. With this, you need to try and teach people to do things peacefully, and that's very, very, very hard to do with the obvious situations that are happening. But another solution is not intervention. We cannot intervene. We cannot repeat the mistakes that we did in the Banana Wars and toppling Saddam and Mossadegh and God, I always forget his name. Gaddafi, yeah. So we can't repeat the same mistakes that we did before. We have to keep our head above water, and we cannot repeat these same mistakes. We have to allow these countries to bring themselves up. Civil war is an unfortunate reality in a lot of these third world countries, and because of its existence, it makes it even that much harder to try and solve these issues. Reason number 4 is pervasive ideologies and fundamentalism. Now, this is a little bit more abstract than the other points I've made. And I say this because it varies depending on the region that you're talking about. Obviously, different regions have different cultural practices, and due to this, it's hard to pinpoint which areas have, you could say, fundamentally bad ideologies and that have somewhat neutral / non-intervening ideologies, if you want to use that term. And one example is in Africa. They practice a lot of genital mutilation, and I think that's a lot in like Sudan and a lot of Eastern Africa. And genital mutilation is obviously a very, very bad thing, regardless of if it's male or female. If it's forced upon people, that I think is a very bad cultural practice. That doesn't even account for other practices such as in Islam, where obviously jihad is a practice, but not everybody is as fundamentalist as a lot of these people are. You have groups like Boko Haram too, who go around and basically kill entire villages just to Allahu Akbar and promote their ideology. And that's, once again, not solving any issues. They do this merely as a show of power, and because they can, due to the mere existence of these third world nations. Last but not least is our socioeconomic system. Free market capitalism does not prioritize human well-being and safety as the number one prerogative for how the economy runs. It's all about money and profits. And because of the conflicts going on in a lot of these nations, both politically and economically, these nations are easily exploited by big multinational corporations who hold a lot of power in today's society. And because of this, that means that it is even more hard to change the situation in a lot of these countries. There are literally financial interests going against the helping of these countries. And it's atrocious. Because if we were to take the proper route, let's say we wanted to bring fresh, clean water to most of Africa that didn't have fresh, clean water. We could do that easily, even just as America, not even asking help from other nations. But because the roadblock is money, we're not prioritizing the health of other people, we're prioritizing our safety and our financial well-being over helping people in our own species that merely live across the Atlantic Sea. And all we have to do is build several desalination plants and give out water filters and water purifiers and whatnot to help solve an issue like not having drinking water. Some people will make the argument that, oh, charity exists, you have the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation who goes around Africa and gives out water filters and stuff, and I'm not gonna lie, they do great work, they really do. But the issue with that line of thinking is that you're not solving the root issue. You're merely putting a band-aid over the issue, which is the system itself. If free market capitalism worked as a socioeconomic system, we would not see the existence of third world countries in the first place. We wouldn't see issues such as not having access to clean water, not having enough food, not having electricity, not having internet, not having healthcare. We wouldn't see such atrocities occurring across the world. And people will often say that it is unrealistic to give the entire world these things. And that's simply untrue. It's a matter of what we prioritize as a species. If we prioritize human well-being, and we prioritize making sure that everyone else has the same standard of living that we do, then the world would not be as much of a shitty place as it is right now. And it is up to people like you and me and everyone we know to try and change this. The only barrier is to spread these ideas. I say this merely as an arbiter for what I think. And my goal is to try and help as many people in the world as possible. I know that one of the issues with our world is the socioeconomic system that we have. Once again, priorities are money and profit. They both are one and the same. And those motives need to be changed to human well-being and human life in order to make sure that we can even survive as a species on this planet. Thank you guys so much for watching. I cannot thank you enough for tuning in. You guys are the reason that I do this, and if you have any suggestions for future videos, please let me know. I love hearing from you guys. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and remember, stay rational.